Welcome to Norse Code, the #1 podcast for your Minnesota Vikings. Our triumphant return for one last episode to close out the month of June. I am your host, Dusty O'Connell. I am recovering from a pretty brutal summer cold. I will set the over-under number of sneezes during this podcast at 7. We'll see how many of them I can successfully mute. Joining me this week is our customary co-host and analyst. He's the editor-in-chief of Vikings Territory and a blogger for Daily Norseman and a handful of other sites around these here internets. And he is Arif Hassan. How are you doing, Arif?
Good. How are you?
Infected in the sinus region.
I suppose we did just cover that, didn't we?
But on that, I'm good. I'm glad to be back behind the microphone for a minute, and I'm also glad that we are joined by our erstwhile producer, James Pogachnik. James, how you doing?
I am fine, I am healthy, and I'm trying to stay away from patient zero. I was even questioning whether or not to be on the show tonight, because I didn't want whatever you were, coughing into the microphone to somehow get all digital and then go on my end, and I become the patient zero of North Dakota. Like, that shit's not cool.
Well, it's not bird flu, MERS, MRSA, or horse herpes, so I think you're okay.
That last one's a
test you for horse herpes? Is that...
They sure can.
Problem in Colorado?
It's a bigger problem in Utah.
It doesn't actually answer my question. Sounds like it's a big problem in Colorado.
It could easily become a big problem in Colorado. They've nearly canceled entire horse shows because of outbreaks of horse herpes in Utah.
It's true, and we do have the National Western Stock Show here every year, so horse herpes is not an unheard of phrase in this part of the Mountain West.
Don't you, the listener, feel better knowing that?
I know, that didn't take long. We sure went off the rails in a hurry.
I'm surprised that you both had information to offer me about horse herpes outbreaks.
Don't tempt us.
The first show that Dusty and I ever did, we had a bit where we talked about this near canceled event out in Utah that involved an outbreak of horse herpes, and these girls who were having to ride around on the horses couldn't ride because the horses all had herpes. Now, this wasn't something that could transfer from horse to human, but it was still important, so the girls had to run around on stick ponies.
What?
This actually happened.
Wait, also, if horse herpes can't transfer from horse to human, did they cancel the event just because, the horses would be really distressed from having to do stuff and having herpes? Or?
Well, no, not all the horses had herpes, but there was a horse herpes outbreak at the horse show, and so to protect the horses who didn't have herpes yet, the
pure horses.
Yeah, exactly. They segregated the tainted horses from the pure ones and made all the girls ride stick ponies instead.
There's video of it on the internet too. It's easy enough to find of these things. And one of the quotes from the person who was heading it up, whose name was Savannah Steed.
Literally can't make it up. This is
the woman. That's why I remember it so well, is because her name was so perfect. Said something along the lines of, "Well, it's important that these girls have this experience now, so they're prepared just in case something like this happens again." Like
later in life.
Yeah, later in life. Just in case
they may have to ride a stick pony.
Yep, exactly.
Because of herpes.
Because of horse herpes.
All I remember is that my analysis for that segment was primarily just laughing hysterically. So, I mean, what else can you really do in that situation?
Yeah, that's all you need. That's pretty good analysis, in my opinion.
I'm proud of it. It was some of my best work.
Well, that I can believe.
Well, given the standard of work to which I aspire, yeah, that, it fits. And yet, we somehow remain popular with our listeners. I want to take a quick moment before we launch into this week's Minnesota news and notes. Not a whole lot that's necessarily Viking specific, although there is an article from earlier this month in the New York Times that I wanted to dissect for you as our lead story. But first, I did want to take a second and say thank you to all of our listeners for your continued support of Norse Code, both by clicking to download and listening to us talk, and by clamoring for us to release more than one episode a month on Twitter, and also for your donations. Charles Harrison from Honolulu, Hawaii, sends in his donation with the note Norse Code support, which is the most succinct way to put it. That's all we ever asked from you was your support, and Charles has offered it. Also this week, a new donor, Ethan Sonter from Grand Forks, North Dakota, keeping it real from the old GFK.
Do you know Ethan? Do y'all know Ethan?
Nope.
I've never had the pleasure.
Not personally.
Grand Forks isn't 500
I'm
people.
from Grand Forks too. I know that it isn't but still.
As miraculous as it is that we all know each other.
It's not. I'm sure he and I both have similar opinions on the nickname here, but no, it's not a. It's not a situation where we actually have met or anything.
Well,
no.
It sounds like you, Arif, actually have the most contact with him. He is at Ethan Tison on Twitter. And,
I talk to him all the time.
Yeah, he writes in his note to us, the purpose of the donation is keeping the lights on and servers churning, which, thank you for that, we really appreciate it. And he writes, from another dude from Grand Forks, thanks for the great podcast, and to Arif for the occasional Twitter banter. Keep it up. Aw.
All right. Go Ethan.
What a guy.
Keep the dream of Grand Forks alive.
Keep it alive. Which, by the way, I think they should call them the Rough Riders.
No. Why the hell would you get the hell off this show?
Lord.
What is wrong with you?
It's not a controversial opinion or anything. What do you think they should be called? At the risk,
none of the 7 for sure. All 7 of those are dumb.
All 7 of them are dumb, but North Dakota is the least dumb, seeing as how it's what it is currently. And it's not a nickname. It's basically just a statement of we are no longer going to have one. And I think that's the best thing that they can do in the city.
The North Dakota, this is why we can't have nice things.
Yes, exactly. I feel like we can get a marching band out of that too.
We could just call them the Pride of the North, but I genuinely do like Rough Riders.
No, there's nothing involving pride and this many white people that's going to go over well. That's not a thing.
A compelling argument.
And that's enough about North Dakota for one episode.
Indeed, thank you to Ethan and Charles for contributing to the show, and if you would like to join the ranks of the Norse Code Wall of Fame, then you may do so by traveling to NorseCodePodcast.com and scrolling all the way down. There's a little PayPal donate link in the bottom right-hand corner of the page that you can click, contribute your $3.50 or $5 or $20 or $100, as you know, believe it or not, some have done in the past, to the cause. And the more you donate, the less we will have to hassle you for money. The more episodes of Norse Code we will be able to bring you, keep the back catalog alive, and keep on keeping on. One other item, if you've got your wallet out and you're feeling clicky, then I wanted to direct you to Chad Greenway's website, the Lead the Way Foundation. There's a fun little competition going on between all your favorite Viking sports blogs right now, and the goal is to raise $10,000 for Chad's Lockers, which is a kind of a little subset of the Lead the Way Foundation. Chad Greenway and his wife have this. I think there's 4 hospitals that currently have Chad's Lockers in them, which provide various entertainment and amusement options for kids and their families who are having extended stays away from home because they're in the hospital. The goal here, and Adam Warwas of Vikings Territory was kind of the driving force behind this, and he was able to bring in Vikings Corner, Daily Norseman, a couple of the other popular blogs, and try to get the number of hospitals that have fully outfitted Chad's lockers in the Minneapolis area from 4 to 7 or 8, I think. And to that end, there's a friendly competition going on. You can go to the chadgreenway.org website. There'll be a link in the show notes, and donate under the banner of your blog of choice. And no matter whose banner you choose to donate under, the real winners in this case will be the kids and their families, who will not have to put up with the crushing boredom of sitting and waiting in a hospital far from home with nowhere to plug in their mobile devices. Or, whatever else.
That's a good way to finish that.
Yeah, right. I know. It was going so well, and then I just, soured the whole thing. Anyway, Chad's Lockers and the Lead the Way Foundation are a really great cause, and Adam Warwas is doing a really great thing. There was a different fundraising drive that he sort of led last year that raised $1,000 for a family who is having some difficulty paying very expensive medical bills. So they have a daughter with pulmonary hypertension and hypertension, excuse me. And Warwas saw that was so successful last year that he decided to up the ante by 10 times this year. And with your help, we can achieve that goal. So check out chadgreenway.org and throw a few bucks to the Lead the Way Foundation for Chad's Lockers.
And if you'd like to try to convince Chad Greenway that he needs to come on the show, you can tweet him at ChadGreenway52.
And that was my purpose for, pimping this primarily. I mean, I wanted to, hat tip Adam, who is a kind soul and a talented fundraiser, it seems, but mostly I'm just trying to get us in good with Chad Greenway.
I don't know.
Yeah, at least two of us can be in good with him.
Which two, James?
I don't want to start naming names or anything. That whole snitches getting stitches thing. But.
Well, then let's go straight into our lead story, which spurred. Actually, it was kind of the impetus for this episode even happening this week. I found this article on the Upshot, which is like the sports bloggy section of the New York Times. And the article came out on June 4th, and it's entitled "The Most Cursed Sports Cities in America." When I saw that,
I think it's like a good idea for an article, but I'm not so sure they executed it well.
Well, and that I knew that I feel like no matter who your favorite sports team is, unless you are from Cleveland and you're just using this as what passes for a victory lap in Cleveland, then almost everyone's going to have that same opinion, right? And I knew for a fact that Minneapolis-St. Paul would be on this list, and I was just curious where. A little surprised to see them all the way down at number 6.
Yeah, no, that was sort of shocking to me. So the list has like a methodology, I guess, and so the three sort of metrics it uses are like, so they've got seasons since the last title, the championship season since 1965. And close calls. So those are the three sort of metrics that they look at. And I don't know, I feel like part of it has to do with like what a definition of cursed would be, and part of it has to do with like just how much you think about it. So like, for example, San Diego is on the list, right? And no one really thinks about San Diego as a team that's cursed, or as a city that has cursed teams. Because they only have 2 teams, right?
Well, they have 3.
What do they have?
The Sharks in the NHL. Or no, that's San Jose. Yeah, I guess they only have 2 teams, yeah.
Right. But yeah, I mean, like, San Diego's just not like a sports town. So I think, like, some of this is just, like, maybe you have to be from, like, a city that cares. So Buffalo only has 2, but they, like, very clearly care about their sports.
Well, and Buffalo has the ignominious, like, 0-for-4 stretch of Super Bowls.
Yeah, the 4-peat? Yeah.
That's pretty impressive.
That's incredible. So I have no issues having Buffalo ahead of Minneapolis or Cleveland, obviously. But it's like weird when you read these other lists. James was mentioning this earlier. Minneapolis generally ranks much higher because it sucks being a sports fan in Minneapolis. But I guess the 91 Twins kind of screwed it all for us on this list?
Yeah, I like how that's what screwed it all up. And lists like this have
one championship in 24 years in any sport is only enough for 6th best on the list.
Yeah. So actually, Bill Simmons had a list like this a couple of years ago, and had several caveats to it. Number one, you need at least a 35-year drought without a title.
It's an important caveat, by the way, as we'll discuss later on in this particular list.
Yes. Number two, the 35-year rule doesn't apply to relocations. Number three, during that 35-year-plus reign without a title, it's not enough to lose. You have to have your guts wrenched a few times. And number four, only teams in cold-weather cities are eligible for level 1 unless the situation is so cruel / unforgiving / unusual that it's practically unprecedented. So one of those,
like Oakland.
It can't be San Diego because, as opposed to Minneapolis, because say it happened in February. If you were in San Diego, you could just go outside and not, die.
Bad. Yeah.
Number five, you need to be just pessimistic enough to keep your guard up for a sucker punch, but just optimistic enough to keep lowering your guard at the worst possible time. And last one, outsiders need to instinctively empathize during a level 1 takedown. You need every other fan base to go, oh, man, that's bad. How did you got 12 guys on the field, and then Favre messed that up? Oh, man, how are you guys going to bring Childress back? Like, you need that sort of...
You're going to bring Childress back.
Well, I think we can all agree that by all of these measures, and I like the Simmons reference because there is a degree of like intangibility to being the most cursed. But I think we can all agree that Cleveland is number 1.
Yeah, no, I think that's just true. And part of it is that Cleveland, so on this list, they've got like a percent of close calls, and it's 10%. I'm not entirely sure percent of what, but sure. And that makes some sense, but like we all know the names of these close calls. We know the fumble, we know the drive, we know red right 88. And so like those things are things that we know that's what happened there. There's a story, it's got a name, and so those close calls I think are like more impactful than say someone who has a similar amount of close calls. Atlanta, well, I guess they have 9%. Not something that I thought about.
But none of those close calls are necessarily like iconic. I mean, all of Cleveland's close calls are named the.
Exactly, right?
And we're not even counting the decision. Like.
Yeah, see, the fact they didn't include that in there kind of renders their whole section on that kind of irrelevant. Like, that's important. That's about as important as any of the ones on their list.
I also think that if you are one of the benefactors of a close call for someone else on the list, say like Atlanta, you should be knocked down a couple of pegs, right? Because you can't be cursed, or you can't be more cursed than the city who you have reestablished a curse for, right? So, like, New Orleans and Atlanta, for example, and I know that this gets complicated because there's so many close calls and there's so many cities and, it sort of overlaps each other. But you can, if you were so interested in creating a metric like the New York Times was, I think that you could, take away points or however you want to put it by acknowledging that one city is a benefactor of a close call that put another city sort of underneath, if you will.
Like 2 cities cannot play one game against each other and then have the result of that game be proof that both cities are cursed?
Exactly, right? And so I think that Atlanta's, benefiting from the close call in 1998, hurts them a little bit. I also think that Atlanta not making the playoffs all that often in most of their sports should hurt them a little bit, because I think that Simmons is right that, it's much more difficult to live through a curse if you get close and you start believing these things, right? Which is sort of why I suppose I could see San Diego on this list, because, I mean, they were pretty good under Schottenheimer and Turner, and they kept on making the playoffs and not doing anything. But Atlanta, whatever, man.
Well, yeah, and I think Atlanta, like, they earned their place at number 2 functionally because of the Braves, who are one of the greatest playoff-making baseball teams of the last 20 years, and one of the worst playoff-playing teams in baseball of the last 20 years.
In MMA terms, they'd be called a gatekeeper. Like they're not going to actually be winning. They're just who you have to go through.
Yeah, exactly. They made the playoffs for 14 straight seasons, starting in 1991, and not coincidentally, the number of close calls to championships for Atlanta is 14-1, all in baseball.
Wow, yeah, there's got to be some sort of distribution that you have to account for, I think. Because if your scores, and obviously Atlanta's hurt by the fact that all of their teams have been droughty, if you will, in terms of championships, but like, if most of the rest of the metrics come from one sport, then I think that you need to account for distribution in some way. I'm not entirely sure how, but I feel like that's relevant.
Yeah.
You could also include the fact, not just one sport for Atlanta, but two, seeing as how their hockey franchise folded and moved back to Canada, or moved to Canada.
That's like... Yeah, that's kind of cursed, I guess, yeah.
They're including that and a couple other ones. I mean, they have Seattle on this list, which, first off...
Good Lord.
It's 13 on the list, and, on their toughest loss, Malcolm Butler in the 2015 Super Bowl. Okay, whatever.
Hashtag recency bias. Good Lord.
Yeah, they're including the loss of the Supersonics in there, which was a terrible thing and everything, but you've won a Super Bowl and just been to another. You're not a tortured sports team.
Not anymore. Like, look, I mean, it says on the season since last title, 2. Like, come on, man.
Well, and Seattle has a very good football team and a very terrible baseball team.
And at the time of the Bill Simmons article, the top 3 teams, it was actually listed as teams and not cities. I'll do top 5. Chicago Cubs.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Minnesota Vikings. Mm-hmm. Buffalo Bills. The Cleveland Browns. And the Cleveland Indians. So Cleveland had 2 entries in the top 5.
The 2 top entries in the top, wow. That makes sense.
Had two entries in there. Number 6 is the San Francisco Giants, and this is before the Giants just started ripping off World Series wins. So, yeah, but the top 5, the Cubs, Vikings, Bills, Browns, and Indians.
I suppose you could, make the argument that Seattle winning 116 games in the regular baseball season in 2001, and then getting blown out by the Yankees in the ALCS is, emblematic of some kind of curse, but really I think that just proves that time is a flat circle, much like a 0, which is the number of championships that the Mariners will probably ever win.
Man, that team is so bad. I don't even follow baseball and they're so bad.
Even when they're good, they're bad. It's ludicrous. Even when they had Ken Griffey Jr., they couldn't put it together. Even when they had Ken Griffey Sr., they couldn't put it together. So there's a section of each cursed city called the toughest loss, where the authors of the article try to pin down the most heartbreaking, the loss, usually in the playoffs, that is most emblematic of why this city is cursed. And we at Norse Code kind of took issue with the choice they made for Minneapolis-St. Paul's.
Well, we're not, upset, but we disagree.
Well, it fostered an interesting discussion, which kind of led to, wanting to talk about this article on the show. Anyway, the loss in the article is the 2010 NFC title game. And just the entire game, with honorable mention going...
the whole game.
But with honorable mention going to Brett Favre's late interception.
It had nothing to do with the Adrian Peterson fumbles and the 12th man on the field and Brad Childress being Brad Childress and Favre's magic running out and the crazy bounties and the broken ankles and the shattered dreams and everything. Nope.
Well, I think that's why they mentioned the entire game, is because it was a very Viking-esque
there's a lot of things going. Yeah.
Game.
But yeah, no, I think we all sort of ended up agreeing that clearly 1998 I think was a more heartbreaking loss, and I've seen this discussion on forums and stuff where people disagree, And in my head, I can't wrap my head around the idea that 2009 was more heartbreaking than 1998, because 2009 did not feel like a team of destiny to me. And I mean, they were a good team. They were like 13-3, and I just don't think that they had a definitive claim to being the best team in the league. I don't think there was any sense that this team was destined to win a Super Bowl. We were all fairly hopeful that they would, but nobody, I think, was sure of that fact. And I think that's for a couple of reasons. I think the first is that there was another team of destiny that they lost to in the playoffs. The New Orleans team was very good, and it's not until we look back on it with sort of the benefit of historical knowledge that team should not have been a team of destiny because they were dirty, rotten cheaters who did dirty, rotten things. But at the time, they were like sort of the NFL's poster boys. I mean, they were reclaiming a city that had been destroyed by Katrina. They had gone undefeated early in the season. I think they went 10-0 or something like that, undefeated. They were gunning for a 19-0 season, and they were doing a very good job of it. And though they were seeded lower than the Vikings, obviously, or no, they weren't. Actually, they were seeded higher than the Vikings. I think that loss was it was in New Orleans. Yeah, I don't think that anyone thought that the Vikings were necessarily the best team. I think people thought that the Vikings could be the best team, but I don't think anyone thought it was sort of uncontested that the Vikings were the best team in the NFL. And as Dusty was saying, I mean, it was Brett Favre. I mean, it kind of would surprise you if people weren't expecting sort of a late game loss because of a Brett Favre boneheaded error.
Well, we were all expecting that at some point in the season, right? Like we spent all of 2009 being like, oh, now we got stupid old Brett Favre. Is he going to fall apart on the field? When's his arm going to fall off? When's he going to throw 20 picks? And he just kept surprising us by never doing that until the
and first Greg Lewis happened, and then it just slowly started building, and all of a sudden we had a tight end that seemed like he was worth half a damn, and then it turned into, hey, Sidney Rice is actually good. Okay, we'll go with this. We'll go with this. And but yeah, it was never a team of destiny necessarily. That idea was definitely
a team of constant pleasant surprises, which we have to get the price for later.
Yeah, anybody who watched the Sunday night game, which had the horrific injury in Phoenix, the horrific leg injury where it was just flopping around in the air. Yeah, hey, there's a little trip down memory lane for you. Yeah, anybody who watched that game, it's like, oh, well, a really tough, hard-hitting defense is going to be a problem. And then we spent the whole rest of the time just going, man, we'll destroy Dallas. That's not a question, but boy, I don't know. Anything going through New Orleans right now looks like a buzz, like it's going through a buzzsaw.
Yeah, and the game itself, I mean, that game certainly did not seem like destined for the Vikings to win. I mean, you had the fumbles, you had the insane hits Brett Favre had to take. It didn't feel like the game was ever in hand. Even the reps. They somehow still managed to keep in it.
Right. That was the thing. Like, New Orleans was letting us stay in there. It was almost like they were toying with us. And I realized that 2009 doesn't have the same connotation in the show How I Met Your Mother when they go to the Vikings bar and somebody mentions 1998 and everyone just goes, ah, like, dude, there's a sign that says never say that. Like, it doesn't have the same connotation, but
yeah,
I'm saying that. But 2009 did have a Prince song. A Prince song was written about the 2009 season. I believe it was called Purple and Gold. And it did have Pants on the Ground. And it felt like there was some momentum going into that game.
Yeah, no, I think that it is a tough loss. I don't think anyone's getting it. But I think that when you compare it to 1998, I mean that was a team of destiny. There's no question it was the best team in the league. They went 15-1. They were up against certainly not a team of destiny. They were up against a fluky team. I mean, who the hell is Chris Chandler? He's the guy who quarterbacked, I think, the 1998 Atlanta Falcons. Whatever. But that offense set records. You had a perfect kicker, and everyone just sort of expected the Vikings to win the Super Bowl that year. And there's just so much more to it that it felt, I don't want to say predestined. No, maybe I do. But it felt like perfect in so many ways, and so to have a game that was in hand for most of it, only to lose it at the very end because your perfect kicker was not perfect, is way more gut-wrenching when the quality that you rely on goes in the completely opposite direction than Favre doing exactly what he does and who he is against a team that arguably was already better anyway.
In his Favrean nature.
But but looking at that, it almost seems like the episode of South Park where Kyle decides to use his money to become black and become taller and everything and gets like built. Like things were going well for a little bit, but at the exact wrong moment, everything broke down. You know,
Are you saying Brett Favre's balls just exploded?
Yes, exactly. That's exactly what I'm saying. The 12-man on the field happened. All the fumbles just stacked onto each other. The fumble at the 1, I think, is still the most important play of that whole game. But the fumble, the 12-man on the field, the Favre interception,
the ghost pass interference on Ben Lieber.
Yes, like just everything happening at once. The balls exploded. The knees were gone, and they're just sitting there like, oh God, like.
But this is like
it was definitely a perfect loss. I just don't think it's comparable. I think
the chickens coming home to roost, or the Team of Destiny and that god awful Going to Miami song.
Well, because like.
Why do I remember the music aspect of that? That Prince song was terrible. If anything cursed, if anything cursed the Vikings out of going into that game, instead of Favre's play or Childress being Childress or something like that, or the refs screwing us, also a possibility. I think that terrible Prince song might have had more to do with the loss, because everything was going good after Pants on the Ground. It's like, yeah, we're doing it, and then Prince comes out with that purple and gold song, and then just death.
Look, blaming Prince for 2009 is, that's like borderline hot take. Like,
it wasn't for Prince.
If it wasn't for Prince, we would have, like, trying to, like, give credit to Pants on the Ground and place blame on poor Prince. I mean, that strikes me as a stretch. But, like, I mean, at the end of the day...
That's how James views the world.
Yeah. So I'm going to get called, like, the Colin Coward of this show, and then we get to decide whether or not Dusty is Stephen A. Smith.
No, I'm
just decide to which degrees each of you are sexist or racist.
If I'm anyone, I am Mike Francesca. I will.
You're gonna fall asleep on the air?
Do a microphone for 90 seconds and fall asleep for a few minutes. Yeah. So here's my question though. Like, has there ever been, like, just in like the last 10 years, a team of incredulity that has gone deep in the NFL playoffs? Because that's really what
every Giants team.
I suppose that's fair.
Here.
Yeah, well, I think the Joe Flacco Baltimore team that won, that was a huge surprise because that team wasn't very good before the playoffs and was extremely good during the playoffs, which is why it was really stupid afterwards for people to talk about how good this Ravens team was, because for most of the season they were not.
No, and Ray Lewis went out and came back with his deer antler spray and was all of a sudden ready.
Yeah, right, and Bryant McKinney turned into, like, a pretty good offensive tackle for 4 games. Like, that was weird.
Like, where was that?
Yeah.
Dude, we sent him to fat camp. Like, what the hell?
Yeah, right. Turns out sending him to fat camp got him fatter.
Well, we sent him to the wrong fat camp. That was
the wrong fat camp.
It actually became the movie Heavyweights. It was crazy.
Fat camp, not a.
Yeah. So there's that. So there's that team, and then I think I'm trying to remember. I think the 2011 Giants weren't, like, surprising or awful, although they probably should have lost the game. But the 2007 Giants, oh yeah, that was a team of incredulity if there ever was one. Even
both years, the Vikings won that last game against them too.
Oh yeah, I think so. So that's what the Giants need. They just need to have us in the schedule in Week 17.
And not Week 3 on primetime.
Yeah.
Watch one of the worst televised performances of any 2 football teams.
And the Sports Center anchors apologizing for what was just broadcast on their channel.
Oh man! Had we known beforehand, oh man,
we would have never shown this. No, other than teams with Eli Manning and Joe Flacco on them, or I guess even teams with just Eli Manning on them, are there really any other, like, examples of teams where the fans themselves are going through the season like, all right, I realize this is a proclivity that is at least somewhat unique or more common with Minnesota Vikings fans, but like we spent that whole 2009 season being like, all right, this can't last forever, and we just kept winning and winning and winning.
Well,
I was blaming it on me. I was at every except for one home game that year, including the playoff game. Except for the playoff game. So like, I was just blaming it on me being good luck for it, and the fact that I wasn't in New Orleans is why we lost the game.
Yeah. Well, next time we'll set up a fund for you, I guess.
Exactly.
No, I think it depends on sort of what level of success you need for it to count in that incredulity, because there's the 2011 Broncos, right, and they beat the Steelers in the playoffs, and then they lost to the Patriots, who then lost to the Giants. There's two teams of incredulity that year, because that was the Tebow Broncos, so that counts, obviously. But if you reduce the level of success needed, I think the 2008 Vikings, right, I think they have to count, because, I mean, they weren't expected to do anything. And then I think every Cardinals team since Kurt Warner that has done well, especially this most recent incarnation of a Cardinals team that went through like 3 or 4 quarterbacks.
The zombie Cardinals, yeah.
Yeah. You could count them. Yeah, no, I think those are probably your teams of incredulity. I don't know in retrospect, because I don't sort of remember what it felt like at the time. But what about the Delhomme Panthers? That's just surprising in retrospect, but I don't know if that was surprising at the time.
No, yeah, at the time it made sense. The phrase "go the full Delhomme" didn't become a thing until after that game. Like, that was the televised fall from grace of falls from grace.
Okay. And then, 2001, obviously the Patriots were a team of incredulity, right? Because you had your second-year, 6th-round quarterback playing, because Drew Bledsoe got injured, with a mediocre offense and like an okay defense, and suddenly Super Bowl win.
Well, yeah. I would say at the time, yeah, team of incredulity, but, in retrospect, maybe team of destiny. Dynasty of destiny.
Dynasty of destiny.
Ugh. Yeah.
All right, Arif, here's my question for you.
Okay.
Who played the Cardinals, or who played for the Cardinals at quarterback for their playoff game?
For the playoff game. It wasn't...
Without Google.
Right. It wasn't Logan Thomas, because that was sort of a thing. Oh, I don't think Ryan Lindley was on their team anymore. Obviously, it wasn't Carson Palmer. Was it Ryan Lindley? It can't have been Ryan Lindley. Oh, man, I am so lost. I'm going to go with Ryan Lindley.
It was, in fact, Ryan Lindley.
Yes!
Nice.
But it took that long in order to try to remember, because that many people played for that team.
Right, well, because I had to go through quarterbacks I knew it wasn't, and I swear Ryan Lindley wasn't on their team at the time, because he was already a terrible quarterback for them, and they'd been through that. But whatever. I guess they went through it again. Also, I remember this is an interesting piece of trivia way back when I was like, it was like, which quarterbacks under 28 have won a playoff game, and this was like before Russell Wilson, and I think it was before Andrew Luck. Well, it had to be because it was also before Russell Wilson. And the answers included T.J. Yates, and I think, was it Derek Anderson? Man, there were some bad quarterbacks on the list. It was like Tim Tebow, T.J. Yates, maybe Derek Anderson, and then, like Joe Flacco.
Derek Anderson? With whom?
I don't know. Maybe it wasn't Derek Anderson. I like that guy just because he yelled at reporters because he was happy and they got mad at him for being happy. I'm always on Team Anderson.
Well, the emotion is only appropriate at certain unknowable moments. Usually only during games.
Let's see. I'm at Derek Anderson's wiki page, which is actually probably not the right page to go to. This is about a bunch of times that Derek Anderson could have led his team to the playoffs and didn't. That's great.
Oh, okay. Written by a fan.
There's just a whole section of that. I feel like the Vikings should have a section like that on theirs. Actually, I'd be curious if the Wikipedia page had an entire section on the Herschel Walker trade.
They have an entire page on it, yeah. It's, well, first, because it's so important, but second, because it's so complex, which is kind of weird. Derek Anderson made a Pro Bowl? Oh my god, Derek Anderson made a Pro Bowl in 2007.
Who are you to doubt Derek Anderson?
I told you I was on Team Anderson.
Well, you say you're on Team Anderson, and then you're like, I didn't know he made a Pro Bowl.
Well, I'm not like president of the Derek Anderson fan club. I'm just a
You need
fan.
to work on your level of commitment to Club Anderson. Your commitment to Sparkle Motion is kind of waning here.
Man, there's some like really weird. We've been over this, right? Where we've been over like some of the people who have made the Pro Bowl. Like Kerry Collins, I think, is a Pro Bowl quarterback. Matt Castle nearly was a Pro Bowl quarterback in 2010. In fact, he probably should have been. Wait, maybe he was actually. Hold on, let's find out if Matt Castle went to a Pro Bowl. Because then we have to call him Pro Bowl quarterback Matt Castle.
From here on out.
Yeah, from here on out. Yeah, he definitely made the Pro Bowl in 2010. Yes.
Nice.
We definitely got to call him that.
So if we bring up Bridgewater later in the show, we have to mention, and he's not going to have to he's not going to have former Pro Bowl quarterback Matt Castle behind him anymore.
Yeah, no, it'll be tough not to have that.
That'll be the pause point in the wiki checkpoint.
So by the way, speaking of Matt Castle, Pro Bowl quarterback Matt Castle is at risk of being cut by the Buffalo Bills. Did you hear about this?
What?
No, I did not hear about this.
Why?
'Cause he sucks. So I guess.
But he's in Buffalo. Like, why would that matter?
We're using Occam's razor for a moment.
It's never stopped him before.
Dusty does bring up a very good point, which is, well, suck is a relative term here. But it is true that suck is a relative term, and he is another quarterback. Multiple people reporting for the Buffalo Bills, I think like Mike Rodak at ESPN, some other people, I think some Buffalo Rumblings has like a good rundown of all the people who've talked about this. But Matt Castle is on the roster bubble because he has been the worst quarterback in practices. He's been inaccurate. He's forced throws into coverage. He's been intercepted far too often in OTA. And I understand it's like the Buffalo defense, but everyone else is up against the Buffalo defense, and they have not been doing nearly as bad. Sal Capaccio says the same thing. Castle hasn't given any reason for the coaching staff to think he's a better option than either of the two younger guys headed to camp. That's a phrase from Sal Capaccio's arrow up, arrow down segment. Matt Castle is bad, but like worse than he was before when he was with the Vikings, where he wasn't like terrible, I guess. I mean, he wasn't good.
Turns out that Christian Ponder disease is contagious. It just has a very long incubation period.
Well, that's not good for E.J. Manuel then either.
No.
I'm like, who's the other quarterback? Is it someone, hopefully not infected by Christian Ponder disease?
Well, I mean, it'll take us a while to figure out if E.J. Manuel is, because as far as I know, there's no test for CP3 disease other than an inability to read and then not throw into coverage.
Let's see, there's Tyrod Taylor from Baltimore and Matt Sims from... I thought he just got cut. Matt Sims is not going to make this team, is he? Oh, no, he didn't get cut. Oh, that's nice.
Well, he could now.
He could now.
It's looking better now for him than it ever has before.
Hooray. Well, but, okay, so definitely it's totally appropriate to make fun of how bad Matt Castle is at times, even though for a while he was quite clearly the best quarterback on the roster for the Vikings. But it needs to sort of always be said when we talk about Matt Castle how improbably awesome his career is. Because he didn't play in college. He didn't. He was a backup the entire time in college. He manages to get drafted by the Patriots. He manages to play well for them, and understandably with like the best supporting cast in history. But like the 2008 Matt Castle Patriots season, that's like a pretty decent season. Sacks. I think he led the team in sacks taken. But it was a pretty good season.
And that will pretty much conclude the Vikings-related portion of this Vikings podcast until we get to the mailbag. So there was we could probably edit this down into like 8 minutes of Vikings content and a good like 10 minutes of bitching about losing in the playoffs.
We're just gonna have a companion piece to this, where it's like, oh, so if you were actually just interested in the Vikings news, here's a link to 30 seconds.
Here's the super cut, or the mini cut rather. The actual episode will be the super cut. Luckily, we have Sports Illustrated reporter Andy Benoit to say dumb things on Twitter to springboard from and offer some, I guess, uncomplicated thoughts about. You were actually, Arif, you were the one that specifically wanted to mention this, and I imagine you're talking about when he went off the Twitter rails and started talking about how, one, scrambled egg whites are a food, which is wrong, and two, that NASCAR is barely a sport and horse racing is not a sport, because who wins horse racing? Not humans, but horses.
No, those are definitely the best follow-up tweets to his super fuck-up. Yeah, so Andy Benoit, during the Women's World Cup, said that... So someone tweeted out, like, a really awesome shot of an England striker, scoring a pretty awesome goal. And they tweeted out this vine, and they said, and who says women's soccer is not worth watching? And Andy Benoit. And then Andy Benoit said, not women's soccer, women's sports in general is not worth watching. And then he followed it up with a tweet, women are every bit as good as men in general, better in many aspects. Their sports are just less entertaining. TV ratings agree, by the way. So those are his two tweets. He since deleted them and apologized for them. Sort of. I don't know if he actually apologized for them. He was just like, I tweeted some things last night. I don't know.
No, it was a general apology, and if you look at the timeline, it now looks like he was apologizing for saying that scrambled egg whites are in fact a food.
No, actually, it looks like he's apologizing for ranking his top 5 quarterbacks in the league: Brady, Rodgers, Luck, Manning, and Ben Roethlisberger.
Yeah, right.
Which, if you want to be fair, I mean...
I was drunk last night. I ranked a bunch of quarterbacks.
Yeah, right. In light of his recent deleted comments about women, the Big Ben one is maybe apology-worthy.
Yeah, let's go with that. I mean, who amongst us hasn't gotten drunk, gone on Twitter, and been like, is Flacco elite? Like,
who just hasn't had a little bit too much to drink and asked about Flacco's eliteness?
Well, he is. I mean, come on. He won a Super Bowl.
No, we are not. We. Eli fucking Manning, and moving on.
We just talked about this.
But no, so I've been watching some of the Women's World Cup. I live in a city that has a reasonably good MLS team and a pretty good, homegrown soccer following. And so I got a lot of requests at work to put on the Women's World Cup, even if it's a match between, 2 foreign teams. It's not just a bunch of, USA homers. And so soccer may be, one of my least favorite sports to watch live, but I think it's hard to make the argument that women's soccer is any less compelling than men's soccer.
I think actually, no, that makes sense to me. I think there's 2 competing sort of things in terms of the entertainment value of women's soccer versus men's soccer. And sort of, I think the most important thing behind all of this is that there's been less development in women's sports in general, women's soccer specifically, than there has been in men's soccer, so you don't sort of get that. But I think the 2 sort of competing things are, there's just less bullshit in women's soccer. You don't have Luis Suarez biting people. You don't have nearly as many dives. It's not part of the culture of women's soccer, I think, in any country, much less sort of in dominant women's soccer at the World Cup. And so there's that, right? And it's not just good fundamentals and fair play. It's just I totally hate watching bullshit. That's awesome. But on the other hand, outside of maybe Lady Andrade, who has the best name in all of women's soccer, maybe sports. But outside of her, there's just not that many technically talented men's soccer. I mean, you get these beautiful dribbles from Cristiano Ronaldo, from Lionel Messi. You don't tend to get sort of those displays in women's soccer, and again, that's just the function of having 40, 50, 60 years less of development. But, I think those two sort of things compete against each other, and it actually is sometimes a little bit, more interesting to watch women's soccer for those reasons, and sometimes a little bit less interesting for those reasons. That, I think, is just a soccer thing. I think if you're not into soccer, you're just not into this debate. I think the issue with Andy Benoit's statement is that, obviously, aside from the fact that it's, like, super dumb, and why would you ever tweet that, ever? Because, like, if you are confident that you're right and you're not being offensive, no one's going to perceive it that way. That's so dumb.
The way he hedges it, it's like he knows he's saying something that's like really, really wrong and sexist, and is just like trying to, cover himself from accusations that he knows are forthcoming that he is saying something wrong and sexist.
Yeah, no, for sure.
It's like he's saying, I don't want to sound like I'm defending Ray Rice.
not to be blank, but
not to sound like a racist, but yeah.
But yeah, I know the one of the issues is that it was like needlessly determinative, right? Like he was like, because he's like, well, there's no essential quality that makes, women's things less, valuable than men's things. But here's a women's thing I find less valuable than a men's thing. And it was just like the way that he was talking about it wasn't just like, hey, so these are the women's sports that, here are the sports that I watch, here are the women's version of the sports I watch. At this time, women's sports is just not as entertaining, which also actually probably would have been criticized, but I don't think nearly as much. But it was like a very blanket, women's sports can't be nearly as entertaining as men's sports, which I think is dumb for a lot of reasons. But, I used to be on the I can't watch the WNBA bandwagon because I couldn't watch the WNBA. But that I think makes sense because for same reasons, right? Like, women's basketball isn't nearly as developed as the sport. It doesn't have the same resources. It doesn't have sort of the same focus. It doesn't have the same recruitment ability as men's basketball does. But women's basketball is getting a lot more entertaining these past couple of years. And I've been able to actually watch and enjoy a lot of games of women's basketball. Not just because the Lynx are very good, although that helps a lot. But I mean,
the Lynx win 33-26, and 4 players finish with triple singles. And that's, I mean,
that's statute.
I personally think that women's soccer is more fun to watch than women's basketball. It's more exciting, and I think women's tennis is more fun to watch than both of those put together because Serena Williams can still put on.
Oh, no kidding!
Oh my God.
But the women's tennis thing completely destroys that argument completely.
Well, yeah, exactly, and there's always compelling competition to be had somewhere. I mean, if you're really the kind of person that wants to watch golf, women's golf is pretty good too. Like it has less to do, I think, with, like you're saying, the intrinsic nature of male versus female sports and the kind of depth of the talent pool and the length of its existence than anything else.
Yeah, and I think that if you take a women's sport at their stage in development as a sport and the amount of resources they have, and compare it to sort of a comparable moment in a men's sport in their history, so like women's basketball, that has been around for 25, 30 years, I think. I'm not entirely sure, obviously. You take a women's basketball team and move like 30 years since basketball became a popular college sport, but just move them 30 years in the past. And I think that they would be competitive. And a lot of people would disagree because like women are supposed to be like biologically inferior, and a lot of that's true for reasons that have probably a little bit more to do with social conditioning than they do with like intrinsic biological whatever. But even if it isn't true, even if it's biologically true, that's actually not sort of what is determinative in a lot of sports situations, because I think the fundamentals, right, of women's basketball or women's soccer are much more developed now than they were 40, 50 years ago, 30, 40 years ago in the men's version of the sport. I mean, if you watch 1970s soccer when these amazingly dominant Brazil teams played, when sort of these all-time greats like Pelé played, it is not interesting to watch compared to women's soccer or men's soccer. and those athletes do not look dynamic. They don't look very good. They don't look athletic. And so if you take the United States women's national team from this year, which isn't a very good U.S. women's national team, I think I think a lot of people kind of agree the 99 team that won the World Cup is better than the current team. I think the 2003 team is probably better than this team. Whatever. If you take this year's team and put them in like the 1970 Men's World Cup, I think they would win, and I think that they would win really, maybe not handily, but fairly dominantly against most, if not all, of those teams, because those teams are not athletically developed. I don't think they're tactically as sound. I don't think they're just not technical. They're just not as technically good as these players, and so I don't think it's even close. And so if you just like, I think account for that. I think that this argument about whether or not a men's sport is more dynamic or more interesting because someone is biologically a better athlete, I think sort of falls away just because you can compare it to the athletes from 30 years ago when the sport was just beginning, and for women, and it's not particularly close, especially because a lot of people prefer to watch college football over professional football. And I think it's kind of uncontested that college athletes are less dynamic and less biologically sound as their 25-year-old counterparts in the NFL. So yeah.
Well, luckily there is a sport, or at least an entertainment that is gender neutral that we can all get behind.
Curling. I love curling.
Well, curling too, but I mean, curling really, unless you live in the part of the country which, you guys are lucky. Y'all still get the CBC on your televisions, whereas I don't have access to Canadian television here, so I get to...
Have you ever considered yourself lucky that you get to Canadian broadcasting?
Yeah, I've considered myself lucky every day of my life, James.
I can go upstairs right now, turn on the TV, and it's possible that Royal Canadian Air Farce will be on.
There is zero red team in my life. Zero. And that makes me sad. And I missed out on a lot of curling as a result. But I was not speaking of curling. I was speaking of the triumphant return of one of my favorite shows from like 10 years ago, BattleBots.
Yeah.
You guys watch the return of BattleBots?
Yeah, I watched it immediately. That was amazing. I loved it.
Yeah.
There were so many throwbacks. I actually did Poor James. You can torrent it and
you don't even have to torrent it. You just go to abc.com and watch it. Like, it's on their website. There will be a link in the show.
Oh, yeah. Also, you can watch it legally. Do that.
Yes, watch it legally. Don't torrent it.
Look, BattleBots needs to make as much money as possible because they have clearly upgraded the size of their arena, at least in terms of like audience, and their moving lighting rig looks pretty expensive. And Farik needs to put food on his table, and the only way he can sustain as much excitement as he has for BattleBots is with a nice big fat check. So please watch legally. But yeah, no, the first fight had me, pardon the pun, riveted.
No, it was great. One of the things I like about, or actually there's a lot of things I like about this that are all related to this point, is that like half the field seems to be composed of people, or even the actual robots, from the original run, the 5-season run that was on Comedy Central. And so you've got these legends, you've got Warhead and Nightmare, and all of these people all these robots that I remember. You also have some of the teams with different robots, like Lisa Winter. She was like the 13-year-old on BattleBots way back when, and she had a robot called Tentamushi and Tentamushi 2.0, and I think there's a 3.0. I didn't like the robot very much. I thought it was like a terrible design. But she was like interesting because she was like the youngest competitor. And then she came back. She's 28 now, and her bot is awesome, except for the brain. I think that's stupid, but whatever. But her bot is awesome. I think that it's exciting to sort of watch that happen. And there's also like a bunch of new robots, and so And one of the issues that SB Nation went into when they talked about a potential BattleBots revival like 2 years ago in an article is that one of the issues that BattleBots ran into is that there were basically, as the show evolved and as robots evolved with the show, there were basically only 3 kinds of robots. You had your sinners, you had your spinners, you had your spinners, your flippers, and now I'm forgetting like the other kind.
What about the smashing robots?
Yeah, hammers.
Hammers. The hammers didn't like do well though. I think that was one of the issues. Anyway, they had a rock paper scissors problem, and you only had 3 kinds of robots. I don't think we're going to see that, at least this season, but also for a while. But maybe he had the hammers because those are probably sort of the weakness for the spinners, right?
If your hammer is long enough, then it can potentially slow down the spinner. But I mean, Ice Force.
Tell me what can happen if your hammer's long enough, Dusty.
You're going to have to. All I can say for sure is that whoever takes down what is it, Ice Force? Ice Wave. Whoever takes down Ice Wave is going to have a big ass hammer.
That's what I think. That's the weakness for Ice Wave, because they've got all of their mechanics on top, unprotected, and then the rest is just like the spinning whatever of death. And so if you could just hit the top of it, you're fine.
So are there rules against flying robots in new BattleBots?
I don't know what the rules for the new BattleBots are, but the rules from the old BattleBots, I believe, prevented flying robots. They definitely prevented. They definitely were against kinetic projectiles. They are okay with flamethrowers, but those are stupid. Strategically, they're awesome to watch. But you can't have projectiles. Which, and then there was like a small debate about whether or not mini robots constituted projectiles. But they're not because they're controlled.
Yeah, if you're controlling them, I mean, if you can steer them, then. But yeah. So I think it's cool that BattleBots is coming back now because in the 10 intervening years we've seen small and light kind of engineering computing devices become much more available, like the Raspberry Pi, more complicated and cheaper Arduino sets. I asked the flying question because, of course, remote control helicopters and drones are available for purchase just off the web. I'm sure you could build one if you really wanted to, and I think that makes it potentially a much more interesting. Like I think the advance of technology allows for more complicated robots with potentially multiple attack vectors and finer control. Maybe multiple weapons. Maybe you get a spinner with a hammer. Whoa.
Oh. I think one of the issues with flying robots is that then you'd have to allow projectiles, and then you have to worry about like audience safety and stuff like that. I don't know if they're going to allow flying robots, or maybe they'll have a class of flying robots in a future season. But I think that's academically interesting, but and also would be fun to watch. But I think there's just like execution problems with allowing that rule.
I'd just like to see 2 flying robots crash into each other.
That would be tight. I would be totally for that.
That's all I'm down for. I'm not trying to think about the logistics or the safety or anything. I just want 2 flying robots to mix it up in the cage.
I want what I want, damn it.
And Dusty doesn't have enough money for 2 drones to just fly into each other, so he wants to see it on ABC.
Dude, I don't have $2,000 to drop on 2 X1s.
That are just gonna crash in. I'm just gonna lose one of them.
Well, no, and then I have to spend all this time learning how to fly it, and then I accidentally turn it around, so right becomes left, and then they just miss each other, and then they both run out of battery. We're talking about a significant time and money investment that just ends in 2 aerial robots crashing together. And I would like somebody else.
When really you just like to turn on TV and watch each other.
Yeah, exactly. I want somebody else to put up the initial expense and time for that. I just want to laugh and clap my hands at the end of the day.
For sure. I think that if this show stays on air, as the show evolves, I think we're going to see some interesting things. I mean, there's a robot fighting community that exists outside of BattleBots, and they have like interesting stuff.
I love the introduction to the new BattleBots where they talk about the robot fighting scene coming up in the mean streets of San Francisco.
Yeah, right.
As though they're like battling in Koreatown and there's like people
some illegal betting.
Yeah, exactly. Lots of betting.
The mean streets is actually just referring to the rent. that they're having to pay in practice spaces.
Exactly.
But yeah, they have like ant weight robots where they're like 1.5 pounds or less is like something that you can find in these robot fighting communities, and I think that's actually really cool because it presents a lot of like unique design constraints that'll force you to come up with really creative ways to win. And also, like, if you can't generate a bunch of momentum or force with a 1.5 pound robot, then you have to find other ways to win. So I think that's kind of cool that exists. I also would like to see just a super heavyweight division, because it looks like right now this ABC version only has one weight division. But I would love for just only 220-pound plus robots to go at each other.
Yeah.
And then
I would like to see a swarm division of ant weight robots. That would be
that would be great.
That would be pretty legit, and that's another thing that would be made more possible by
today,
modern technology. Yeah. Oh,
no, that's great.
Frankly, I will watch anything as long as Kenny Florian can maintain his just like astonished look of incredulity to everything that's happening in front of him. Like, the reaction shots of the announcer booth, at least for episode 1, are phenomenal. Kenny Florian clearly cannot believe any of this shit that's happening in front of him.
Kenny Florian is an amazing commentator for this.
He's amazing at everything. He is a hero. He has amazing hair. He was an excellent UFC fighter, although, maybe not the best in the world, but he's an excellent commentator, especially for this, and the man's facial expressions are just priceless.
No, it's perfect. Hopefully he can keep that up, because one of the things that made BattleBots sort of interesting when you get rid of all of the awkward Carmen Electra interstitials and the Sklar brothers being dumb, I think they had good announcers that were like fun and engaging and like realized that it was a joke, but like were in on the joke too, like we were part of the joke. And so I think Kenny Florian is doing a phenomenal job of like maintaining that. At the same time, you've got he seems to know about robots, which okay, great, that's awesome. I'm really happy with the way that they're doing it. I can't wait for them to do one of those Royal Rumbles or Brawls they used to do in BattleBots on Comedy Central and in Robot Wars, where like all the losing robots go at each other and then like the final one standing wins. I love that. They should do that.
Oh, that's yes, all of that. James, final thoughts on BattleBots?
I can't wait to catch up on the show and be as excited about Kenny Florian and Kenny Florian's hair.
You will be, we promise.
He manages. He's almost got like the uniform hair length thing going on, but it's like he's got a long beard, so it's okay that he has long hair on top. Like it's really working. His style really works for me. Please marry me, Kenny Florian. let's just come out with it. Should we mailbag? We got a few Twitter and email questions from
it's time to mailbag.
Our dedicated listeners. Friend of the show and repeat donor Tommy the Gun 13, writes us on Twitter with a few questions. Would it be better to have Thompson start at guard and Clemmings stay at tackle to replace Lodeholt or Khalil, or to put Clemmings at guard?
I don't think that having Thompson start at guard is necessarily the right thing to do. I think that, I haven't seen him play guard, obviously, in MTA, so obviously super qualify all of my statements about people I haven't seen play yet. But I do think that it makes sense to have Clemmings stay at tackle. I've detailed this in a couple of places, but I haven't put it, I think, in an article or in the podcast proper. I don't remember. But I do think that Clemmings at tackle is the right thing to do, because I think that he can be a future tackle. I think that putting him at guard, I think, it creates problems in terms of training him in terms of his footwork. Not because guard is a bad way to start someone off to become a tackle, but because the Vikings' plan is to put him at right guard. If they kept Brandon Fusco at right guard and put Clemmings in at left guard, I would be totally for that, because I think that it would train him to replace Matt Khalil, which I think is more likely what you want to have happen, and have him replace Phil Lodeholt, who's for the moment playing well, even though he's about to get up there in age. He's not, at the point where you have to consider replacing him, but he's at the point where you have to consider thinking about potentially replacing him in the future. Whereas Matt Khalil, you kind of just want to replace him unless he just screws it up. And I think you're more likely to have to replace Matt Khalil soon than you are Phil Lodeholt soon. And I think that Clemmings, as a first-round talent, has the ability to do that. But he has a lot of things to fix, and the biggest thing he has to fix is his footwork. And I don't want to put him at right guard and teach him right-sided footwork, even though he already has right-sided footwork from college, and sort of cement that in before he suddenly has to play on the left side. I'd rather have him play left guard. But if he's not going to play left guard, I don't want him to play guard at all. I'd rather have him play tackle and learn how to do that as a backup, because I think that having him start at all is a bad idea, just because he's so raw. He's such a huge liability because he's very inconsistent about his technique. One of the good things about Clemmings is that he doesn't really have muscle memory for playing tackle. I mean, he's only played tackle for 2 years. And because of that, he hasn't learned any footwork, and he hasn't made his reactions faster as a result of it. And that makes him a big liability, especially because playing guard, some things are just going to be faster because they're on top of you right away, even though they are technically slower players at defensive tackle. They're right there, and so you have to react faster. Because at tackle, you can be patient, even if you have to be more athletic. At guard, you can't be nearly as patient, and you can't spend time reading the person in front of you. So you have to be quicker, and footwork is arguably more important at guard. And so I don't want him to play because I don't think he's ready to play. Tyrus Thompson, I think he's much more ready to play, but he's so inconsistent for different reasons, and I think that he's not nearly as good of a player that I don't want him at guard either. I'm hoping that Yankee steps up. If Yankee doesn't step up, I think Berger ends up taking that spot. But I do want Clemmings to stay at tackle so you can learn how to play tackle. I do want a guard besides Clemmings. If that has to be Tyrus Thompson, I think that is better. I don't think it has to be Tyrus Thompson, and I think that you can give Berger or Yankee.
So the answer is C, none of the above.
Yay!
Why is bacon so darn good, speaking of breakfast, given that we had initially...
Sodium and fat content. And evolution.
Okay, so everybody, bacon. All right. Bacon's great. Question for you two. Cured or uncured bacon?
Cured.
Cured, and it's not even close.
You are both wrong. Uncured bacon is superior.
I'm sure you're going to explain why.
Well, first of all, curing isn't necessary anymore. I mean, we all have refrigerators now, and we can all just eat our fresh pork. And I mean,
I don't think anyone was talking about the ability to preserve meats without a refrigerator.
Well,
that did not come up in our conversation.
But when you think about it, that's the only purpose for curing this otherwise delicious. I mean, it's pretty much pork belly, right? Uncured bacon. Why wouldn't you just want to eat some pork belly? Why do you got to add sugar?
Because it's more delicious.
Look, if I want sugar on my pork belly, then I am just going to make some candied uncured bacon.
That's fine. Well, I agree that uncured bacon is more flexible in terms of what you can do with it. I still think that doesn't make uncured bacon taste better than cured bacon. You're presenting two different arguments. You're just basically saying you should buy uncured bacon because you can do a little bit more with it because there's no sugar on it. But I think between the two, I think cured bacon tastes better.
I mean, you are correct. I generally prefer uncured bacon because it is more versatile. However, having just cooked and eaten uncured bacon for a while after I finally realized that there was a difference, and I was like, oh, you mean I can just buy pork belly sliced in a package? Awesome. I've developed an affinity for it, and now
it's really fun. I like pork belly as a cooking ingredient, actually a little bit more than bacon in a lot of respects because of its flexibility, and because it's actually a little bit easier to use its fat as a cooking medium than it is bacon fat, even though I love bacon fat.
Yes, that is true.
But,
I just don't know if I've ever made a decision as to whether or not I like something more as a result of its flexibility as a food.
Well, then you should consider growing up. Oh, well, fuck you. Fee, fi, fo, fum. I smell Kraft dinner. You enjoy your Kraft dinner over there, James. Will the Vikings take 3 quarterbacks into the season? Pros and cons to keeping only 2.
I think that given the Vikings' history with quarterbacks, there's not a chance in hell they'll take less than 3. I think they've played their third quarterback in games every year going back to, I think, 2006, except for 2009. I think that's the only year they didn't go to their third quarterback. And so I think they're pretty used to having to go to their third quarterback and are not going to tempt fate. But also, even if it weren't for the Vikings' consistent history of having to play the third quarterback for the stupidest reasons, like being bad at second quarterback, which I consider a stupid reason. Also, it allows you to develop a young quarterback, because I think that, Sean Hill is like 53, I think. But yeah, you can develop either Mike Kafka or Taylor Heineke. I think Heineke is probably your better option in terms of development. But you can develop them, and it's not a very good shot, because, say 7th round or undrafted guys. It's not a very good shot of finding a quarterback who has the ability to start, but you have a pretty decent shot of developing a backup quality quarterback for very minimal cost. I think old people probably tend to get injured more, and if your backup is super old, I think you probably have to carry a third quarterback. Obviously, there's a bunch of pros to having only 2 quarterbacks. I think more and more teams are trending towards keeping 2 quarterbacks instead of 3. It gives you more flexibility in the rest of your roster. You can do sort of more things with that extra roster spot, which is nice, but I don't think the Vikings are going to do that.
It seems to me like like you were saying, the Vikings have had a long history of having to play their third quarterback for reasons that are both stupid and more stupid. I think it would be wise for them to keep 3 quarterbacks just because it keeps them out of a situation where, a good season can be spoiled by quarterback injury panic. Like, if you have 2 quarterbacks and they're both injured, then it's like, well, now we are in a position where we need a unique position player that tends to command a lot of money, and we are very desperate, and so we are probably going to end up having to make probably a long-term minus EV deal with another team to get a quarterback just so we can finish out our stupid season.
Yeah. Yes, minus EV is a good way to put it.
Now then, in regards to paprika, do you prefer the sweeter or milder varieties? Please answer in song format. Which
I will not answer in song format.
We're not doing that, yeah.
Yeah, we're not going to answer in song format, but I will say, obviously, I prefer more flavor to less. And so, obviously, the sweeter varieties, but relatedly, I went to Penzeys recently, Penzeys Spices. They're a specialty spice purveyor. And it turns out they're a franchise, which is whatever, they're great. I love them. I went to Penzeys and we got a bunch of spices. It was very expensive, but whatever. And one of the biggest differences I found between getting your spice from a specialty spice purveyor and getting it from like McCormick's or whatever you get at like Cub or Rainbow or whatever your local grocery store is paprika. Paprika is so much better than in when you've got like a thing that's like committed to spices, providing those spices for you than it is at the store. It is there's so much more. I do want to say depth of flavor because there's more there. It's just more punch to it, and I love it, and it's delicious. And we're never going back to the old paprika. We will probably no longer buy specialty like black peppercorns or whatever, but we wanted to try basically every spice I had in the store to see which ones were better and which ones weren't. And most of them were better, and so we're very happy, and I would recommend that. But I don't even know why you would ask this question. Obviously, more flavor is better.
James, do you have an opinion on paprika?
I actually do not have an opinion on paprika.
Why am I not surprised?
Because I'm apparently somebody who needs to grow the fuck up.
I kid because I love James. Sorry.
Yeah, well, it's not like I didn't bring up the potato salad Kickstarter just to get a rise out of you this week.
I swear to God, I will end you. I will kill you in your sleep.
Man, it's the stupidest stuff that's Dusty off. Games that an adult, Kickstarter, Star Wars, just the stupidest thing.
If we could combine all of these things, Arif and I actually tried to have a serious discussion about Star Wars novella the other day, just to see if what Dusty's reaction would be.
Once you guys started talking about the alternate universe or whatever, I just peaced out. I was like, I'm good.
It's not an alternate universe; it's an expanded universe. It's the same universe.
Okay. To answer Kyle's question, though, I tend to prefer Spanish paprika to Hungarian, and I eat sriracha as though it were ketchup. And so I tend to like half-sweet or strong paprika, or pimentón picante, or pimentón agridulce. Almost always smoked. Unless I'm making a recipe that specifically does not call for smoked flavor, I will use smoked paprika, usually from Penzeys, in just about everything I make. In fact, it goes great in craft dinner.
By the way.
By the by, a little bit of smoked paprika and some cumin is a delightful thing to add to craft dinner, or, believe it or not, to potato salad. I blame Kyle for...
What do you mean, believe it or not? It's obviously good in potato salad.
It's good in most things. I actually was able to educate Kyle a little bit on a better way to make potato salad, and I didn't need no goddamn Kickstarter to do it. I just did it.
Please donate us money because he made potato salad.
Yeah, I would like $70,000. I made potato salad. In fact,
if you would like to enrage Dusty and have a hilarious next episode, please send us a donation towards Dusty and his potato salad dreams.
I will make potato salad. It will be so effing good. The secret is to use both red and brown potatoes and like cut them a little differently. Like cut the brown ones into like a large dice and just slice the red ones, and then cook them for the same amount of time so the red ones are still like a little bit crunchy and the brown ones are like completely soft. You get a nice combination of textures, a little bit different flavor. Always use mustard powder or wasabi powder or lots of paprika in my potato salad, and I often like to add a little bit of pork belly. So there you go. There's bringing it all together food-wise into...
Bring it all together. Yeah, I think people sometimes write in specifically to bring out the food snob portion of like Dusty's psyche.
This is leaving aside the extended conversation I've been having for the last like week and a half with Logan about his new AeroPress.
God damn it.
which I'm not gonna deal with on this episode.
Yeah, because we've had 4 episodes dedicated to how great AeroPresses are.
And we clearly need more.
I'm going to get one eventually, but we have a lot of stuff to deal with now that the roommates moved out and taken like half of our kitchen appliances.
Oh, the kitchen rebuild is always rough.
Yeah.
I may never have another KitchenAid. I really miss having the KitchenAid Professional with the ice cream maker bowl and like all the attachments. Oh man, that made my baking life much more leisurely. However, we do have a little bit of Vikings-related content left, so I suppose we should... I know, can you believe that?
What are the Vikings?
It's like, I don't know,
According to this list, apparently they're like the second most tortured thing ever.
Oh, well, that makes sense.
That's fair. Ben Johnson at Vandalvike writes us, if you could pull any former Viking through time and add him to the current roster, who would you choose?
That's actually a pretty good question. So normally, you would choose a quarterback, Fran Tarkenton, or 2009 Brett Favre.
Don't that. We've been over specifically not 2009. I don't care who's coaching.
Okay.
Wait, is this if you want a positive or a negative? Because if you brought 2010 Brett Favre, it'd be very, very entertaining.
We'd have a great pick. You're right. Both in terms of the draft and interception. But I think normally you'd bring a quarterback because the Vikings have always needed a quarterback, and they've never been able to live up to Fran Tarkenton, and that would be great. But I think this time you wouldn't. And I would just feel just like so much better if we had like Randall McDaniel at guard, or any of the great tackles the Vikings have had, like Zimmerman or Yeri. Although I guess you wouldn't literally want Ron Yeri because he's like 280. He played at 280 pounds, but you know, a person who played exactly as well as would not be bad. But yeah, I think that's kind of where you want to do it. I wouldn't be averse to having a Paul Krause type safety to pair with Harrison Smith. That would be very awesome. But I think right now I'd want a tackle.
I'm kind of bothered that you picked McDaniel there initially. I was thinking I'll do a dark horse thing. I'll choose McDaniel. I think that'll be a smarter pick, and we could certainly use it. And Arif goes and ends up being an asshole and ends up picking himself.
I'm so sorry.
He is reaffirming your genius.
Is that what that is?
Minds think alike.
It's your alternate interpretation of me just stealing your pick from the future. That's more reasonable.
It's an extended universe, Dusty. It's not.
Wait, it builds on the already existing universe. There's no way it's an alternate universe. It's not Star Trek.
Star Trek does have an alternate universe, but at least it's consistent, and it's referred to.
What?
There is one alternate universe, and it is traveled to by participants in multiple series. They dick around with they go a little far with it in Enterprise, but I feel like.
So hold on, there were multiple universes that were established in one of the Next Generation episodes when there were like 8 million Rikers and one of them blew up. Like, there's clearly multiple Star Trek universes.
Well, no, okay. Only in the sense that the quantum nature of the quote-unquote universe means that there are, infinite number of universes happening, all possibilities are happening at the same time. Which, not all of them are Star Trek, so, that's fine. The extra Riker, though, was created by a transporter accident, not an alternate universe.
No, the extra Riker was a transporter accident, but there was I don't know why I'm going into this, but there is an episode where you have like 8 million Enterprises on one screen, and one of them blows up because one of them is commandeered by a crazy Riker. So,
because they had been stuck in like the time loop forever, and they're like, no, you can't send us back. You don't know what it's like, and then the real Riker just kills them.
Yeah, that's great.
But I was speaking to the alternate universe, like with the A and the U capitalized. That is a recurring plot theme in Deep Space Nine and in Enterprise.
Right, but also like so the movie is an alternate universe too. The most recent 2 movies, and so are the books. The books are like a third alternate universe in Star Trek. They're not part of the Star Trek universe.
The books are kind of a tricky thing. I would say that the books are non-canon.
That puts them in another universe.
I'm afraid that is. I have to agree with Arif on that.
All right, I'll allow it.
All right, I think we have another piece of Vikings-related mail.
Nate Schetzel writes us with an email.
Why do you guys listen to us?
Because don't ask them that.
The off season is amazing.
If you start asking it, then they'll start asking it, and then we've broken the fourth wall. Clearly, who is going to be Mr. Mankato, and why is it going to be Stephon Diggs?
Actually, I wouldn't be so I think I was having this discussion either with y'all or with someone else about how it would have been an amazing Mr. Mankato setup to have Duron Carter, because you have Duron Carter against Adam Thielen and like all of the things for why someone would be Mr. Mankato are present. But it can't be Adam Thielen probably because he was already Mr. Mankato. And Stephon Diggs I think is a good one, but I think you expect him to make the team. He already has buzz, which that's not a disqualifier. I think Stephen Burton was a Mr. Mankato, and he had OTA's buzz. But I don't know. He feels too talented to be a Mr. Mankato. But I think that Diggs is not a bad pick. If it has to be an offensive player, and it usually is, that's a little tough for me. I like 2 defensive players though as Mr. Mankato. One, Leon Mackey from Texas Tech, who I continue to promise to write a story about and still haven't, in part because I lost the interview, that I just don't have the audio anymore. But he is a fascinating story. And then also Edmund Robinson from Newberry, a 7th-round pick from a small school. So you can have basically, Texas Tech isn't a small school in terms of like the football world, but because Leon Mackey comes from arena football and indoor football and like a community college as well as Texas Tech, he's basically a small schooler and he's undrafted, so he could be Mr. Mankato. Edmund Robinson could be Mr. Mankato. If it has to be an offensive guy, I can't think of who it would be because I don't think you can choose any of these other receivers. I mean, I love Gavin Lutman. I think even better than Lutman is the Notre Dame receiver, Toot, I think is his name. Yeah, Javarius Daniels Toot. I like Jordan Leslie from BYU and UTEP. He's a former Joe Bannier teammate. And then there's Isaac Fruchty from the University of Minnesota, but I don't think they're going to do well enough at camp to be Mr. Mankato. And so that'll be tough. I don't think it's going to be either the quarterbacks. It could be Michael Pruitt, but he's also a 5th-round pick. But he has less buzz, so, who knows. So I think this year it's better if it's a defensive player because I think there's more interesting defensive stories.
Alrighty then. Have the OTAs given you more or less confidence in the O-line with all of the rotation?
It's given me the same amount of confidence, which wasn't very much. I haven't really adjusted my opinion of this O-line because of OTA. So, and I'm not just saying that because like sports reporters are like cynical OTAs and you shouldn't read it. I just mean like there hasn't been any news about them except for the fact of rotation and why they're rotating. And so there's nothing to glean from OTAs about why a particular player will help line or why them a lot. So I wouldn't change confidence as a result.
On that note, is David Yankee.
David Yankee has taken a lot of second-team snaps in OTAs. He has taken some first-team snaps. He's taken first-team snaps in rotation with Brandon Fusco at left guard. He's taken some with the rest of the first-team offensive line and the rest of the, with Teddy Bridgewater and Kyle Rudolph, and so the rest of the offense too. And then he also took some first-team snaps when Clemmings had a minor injury in OTAs. He ended up taking the rest of the snaps for Clemmings at right guard in the 2-minute drill. Yankee has been rotating in, but you just haven't seen him as much with the first team. But he's been there, so I wouldn't say that he's like disappeared or that he's slated to be a disappointment yet. I think they just want to have more snaps given to rookies just to see sort of who the rookies are.
Of those who have flashed in OTAs, whose dominance will be slowed down by pads and the physicality of training camp?
Not very many people have flashed in OTAs. I think the two people you want to point out are Stephon Diggs, like Schetzel already mentioned, and Michael Pruitt, the other 5th-round pick that I just mentioned. Both have done well in OTAs. Other than them, no one's really talked about Mike Wallace because he's doing well and he's expected to do well. Cordero Patterson hasn't really flashed in OTAs, but he hasn't been bad. I don't know. No one's really flashed, and so it's like difficult to show up. Like even Trey Waynes hasn't flashed. Eric Kendricks has, so you could include him. And then I don't think Eric Kendricks will be slowed down by pad physicality of training camp. So it's probably going to be either Pruitt or Diggs. And I think of the two of them, I like them both, so I don't really want to give a slight to either of them. But the more likely one in my head is probably Pruitt, even though he's more solidly built than Diggs. And Diggs has a history. I think it's Pruitt just have to go up against linebackers. And it's harder for a tight end to flash to maintain that level of consistency than a receiver who is talented but dropped because of injury concerns.
And finally, on a scale of percentage chance you'll be unblocked by Samantha Ponder to number of wrinkles on Norv Turner's neck, how much money do you have to raise to go to training camp this year?
It sounds like none. I'll have to go back. I'll have to talk to Vikings Journal again to see if they're paying my way there. But if they are, none, and that's great. And that's why I haven't mentioned it yet, because I don't think I'll have to raise money this year. If I do, then I'll probably won't have to raise it through a fundraiser. I'll probably just be able to sell copies of my training camp guide, which is in progress right now.
Hooray! Which means you will not have to rely on our experienced begging skills to get you over the hump and into minicamp. Although it seemed like you had plenty of willing and friendly supporters who didn't even want a training camp guide. They just wanted you to go and report. But
yeah, it was really nice. I like those.
If only you could, point that in the direction of a cooking thing, perhaps a traditional summer dish.
Like a potato salad?
Well, I mean, if you're going to do a potato salad, you'd want to make sure you do it right, and I feel like in order to get the right ingredients, you'd have to get some additional funding for that, right?
No, for sure. I think you have to make sure that you get the best possible potato salad. I hear you have to have 2 kinds of potatoes. That's a big expense, so you probably have to raise a little bit of money for that.
I hate you guys so much. Oh my God, I'm going to rip your faces off of your faces. Oh my God, I'm on fire. I can't take this. All right. So that's enough of that. Wait, let me check the old Twitter. Oh, good. Here's something we can end the show with. Jesse Silva tweets us from his professional account. Are there any good underrated shows on Netflix? Which he just got yesterday. Welcome to the 21st century, Jesse.
Instead of answering the question, can we just make fun of him for just now getting access?
He might be the last person left on this planet to get Netflix.
They cut him a hell of a deal. He's not paying for the first 6 months or something.
Yeah, right.
I also have no idea how to answer this question. Like, yeah, every show I watch on Netflix is probably underrated. That's why it's on Netflix.
He claims to be open to anything, but in the conversation, he turns down the opportunity to watch Breaking Bad, X-Files, or Third Rock, none of which I think are really underrated.
Right, but they're both, I mean, all 3 are very, very good.
They're all good choices.
I love Third Rock. I don't know, man. I hear Scandal is good. I think that's not on Netflix. Whatever. What's the political one with, what's his name?
House of Cards with Kevin Spacey?
Yes, I was going to say Kevin Bacon. I was like, it's not Kevin Bacon.
You're right.
I'm trying to envision Kevin Bacon in the Kevin Spacey role, and it's not going
Actually,
well.
Kevin Uncured Pork Belly.
Kevin nitrate-filled bacon. No, I think I love House of Cards, but I think that's like a somewhat specific audience. I loved it. I like The Blacklist, too, but I probably wouldn't put that in my top 15 shows on Netflix. This just came up in my head. I don't know, man. There's a bunch of shows on Netflix.
I would say Arrested Development is essential viewing if you have not seen it yet.
Oh, yeah, you should see it.
Netflix.
I don't know. The most recent season is bad, but...
I actually really like the new season. Netflix is the perfect venue for watching it because you get a lot more of the otherwise very subtle jokes if you binge.
Right, yeah, no, they're really subtle. It's like, and I'm not like bragging or anything. It's like really difficult to find all of them in one showing. Because there's callbacks, not just to like a couple episodes ago, but to like previous seasons with just like one line and then they won't mention it.
Well, and there's like foreshadowing, like multiple seasons in advance. Like they lay it on pretty thick.
Yeah, and so I don't know. I best enjoyed Arrested Development. I think on my 3rd viewing, because I think that gave me everything I needed to enjoy all those jokes. But yeah, Arrested Development is great. Is Community is on Netflix. Speaking of comedies,
nope.
No,
it's not.
Community hasn't been on Netflix for a while. Parks and Rec is, but Community isn't.
Oh, that's sad.
Yeah, that's lame.
So I would actually go Parks and Rec. I think that's the only non-kids show I've seen on Netflix in the past 2 years.
Oh my God, your life is awful.
I can tell you all about the absurd kids shows that are on there, like Dinosaur Train and
Train,
Special Agent Oso. The stuffed bear who helps who parachutes in and helps people brush their teeth and tries to help teach them important lessons about how to fly a kite.
Well, speaking of children's television, an epic piece of nostalgia just landed on Netflix. A terrible piece of nostalgia, which you may remember enjoying from
You
your...
only have the first 2 seasons.
Never watch again, is the Super Mario Brothers Super Show.
Oh my God, that was terrible.
Yeah, never watch that again. But a show that just landed on Netflix about a week ago that definitely stands up to the test of time is Danger Mouse.
Yeah, I just noticed that it was there. my girlfriend was like, Danger Mouse? They were just a band. I was like, oh, no, we need to watch this stuff.
What?
Let me show you something.
I might have broken up with her out of rage at that moment. Like, I feel like I don't even know you.
So Arif's dating somebody who's never heard of Danger Mouse. I'm dating somebody who doesn't like Chappelle's show. It's just wrong.
And that's why I am single.
Yes, because people have terrible taste in things.
Because everyone sucks with me. But no, seriously, Danger Mouse, the animation is a joke. Like, you can clearly see how many corners they cut to episodes of the show as they can, but the benefit to that is that it survives on the strength of its very clever, like, kind of slapstick British comedy style writing. And so, 25, 30 years later, it's still funny.
Yeah, no, I like Danger Mouse. In terms of the kind of television I'm watching right now, unfortunately, the Food Network has like a very limited agreement with Netflix. So you only have like selected episodes of Good Eats.
There's 5 episodes of Good Eats, and they're all pretty good.
They're all pretty good. Well, actually, all but one, because there's like one live episode with like Ted Allen, which I thought that would be great to have Ted Allen and Alton Brown talking about food, and then also kind of live. Turns out that episode sucks.
Super scripted.
Yeah. But the rest is great.
We managed to do an episode that lasted nearly 2 hours, and we accomplished functionally nothing.
Thanks.
That's not true. We were able to get some Vikings content in, along with the update on the week in Twitter and the week in food and the week in things that alternately annoy Dusty and Arif.
Right.
So that's going to do it for this episode of Norse Code. We will return in due time, I suppose, once we discover something else that we can build an episode around. In the meantime, make sure to check out Arif's work at Vikings Territory, although I imagine you are probably focused on your training camp guide at the moment and maybe not writing so much for the blogs.
Yeah, I've been writing significantly less for blogs, and I'm focusing, in part because I'm focusing on the training camp guide.
Well, then, keep your fingers crossed for that. Check out the stuff happening at Daily Norseman throughout the off season. The Vikings released their training camp practice schedule, including autograph dates. You can check that stuff out at Vikings.com. In the meantime, Arif Hassan remains quite active on Twitter. You can follow him at Arif Hassan NFL. Our producer James is also pretty active at Big Mono. You can follow me at Dusty O'Connell and collect a smattering of news and information from all over the Twitterverse, or you can just follow our official account at NorseCodeDN to stay hooked up with your Norse Code updates. Norse Code publishes whenever we feel like it to iTunes and all of your favorite podcast aggregators. Strongly recommend you subscribe using iTunes or Stitcher, which it seems like most of you already do. And we'll be back as soon as we have at least one piece of content around which we could ostensibly create a show. But that's the off season for you. And we have made no progress on a new formula. Listener submissions to that end are always welcome. But until then, our formula is and does remain that Christian Ponder sucks. We'll see you soon.
Norse Code is the official podcast of the Daily Norseman SB Nation blog and is produced with cooperation from Pompous Jerk Productions. Pompous Jerk Productions. Attitude with attitude. The opinions expressed in this podcast are solely those of their contributors and do not reflect official positions of the Minnesota Vikings, SB Nation, the Daily Norseman staff, or PJP. No information in this podcast should be construed as gambling advice. Please obey all local gaming laws.
Our formula is this. We go out, we hit people in the mouth.